Hello, this is our utility room, and when we moved in about 4 years ago we did a little bit of light touch redecoration, mainly because we weren't big fans of the luminous turquoise blue that the room was originally painted in. And since then we've been living with it while other work on the bungalow took priority. But now the time has come to completely strip all of this out and make something more functional. One of the main things we need is more storage space in here. We've just got stuff laying everywhere. Meanwhile, there's lots of gaping holes where additional storage would be really useful. And we've got this really ugly cabinet in the corner here, which, as you can see, is just full of stuff. Mickey, there's no food in there. This sink gets used a lot for washing up dirty paintbrushes and things like that. And you can see there's a lot of splashes on the wall. So I think we also need to incorporate some kind of large splash back here. I'm also going to be making new worktops to replace this one, and there's loads of empty space at the end here that we could make much better use of. One of the main reasons we've decided to do a custom build rather than to just buy some regular kitchen cabinets and install them is because we want something a little bit out of the ordinary. The worktop that we have fitted here is slightly higher than your average kitchen worktop, but I actually want to make it even higher still, and that's because we have these pipes that lead to the sink, and I want to avoid having an ugly cutout here. Also, I'd like to incorporate some kind of space for our microwave up here on the wall somewhere. I was very organised with this project, mainly because I had to be, because taking delivery of such a large quantity of materials with limited storage space and no idea what the weather was going to be like meant that a full cut list and diagrams showing where to make each cut was required. Breaking these sheets down into manageable pieces straight away is going to make it much easier to manoeuvre these sheets inside the workshop. So this is 18mm moisture resistant MDF by MEDITE SMARTPLY, who are kindly sponsoring this video. Each piece got numbered so that I can cross-reference it to my diagrams, and then I can cut each piece accurately to size at the table saw based on the dimensions from my cut list. And I'm ticking them off the list and also writing on the panels what they are going to be so that I don't lose the plot. This is the pile of offcuts, and some of this will come in useful later in the project. Starting with my base unit side panels, I want some shelf pinholes in these, so I start by finding the centre point, and then using some scraps of ply, I'm going to make a simple jig. I don't need loads of adjustability with these shelves, so 3 holes on each side with about 50mm in between them should do the job nicely. I use the drill press for this so that my holes are nice and straight. And then I can line up my centre mark on the jig with the centre mark on the side panels and drill out the holes on each side using a piece of tape on the drill bit to gauge how deep I want to drill. I decided to assemble the cabinets at this point. These are going to get painted, and painting them while they are disassembled might seem like a more sensible option, but I have limited work surfaces to lay out all the panels while painting, so I figured if I assembled them first it would be much more space efficient. I used glue and brad nails to hold things together until I could get some screws in, and I don't need to worry about hiding my screw heads on this project because everything is going to get hidden later when I install the end panels for each cabinet. I cut some 6mm MR MDF to use for the back panels. I like to glue and nail one of the shorter sides first, and then I can pull the carcass into square, referencing from the back panel before nailing on the rest. Originally I was going to rebate these end panels into the carcass, but I came to the conclusion that it wasn't necessary, as again the end panels are going to hide the edges of the back panels, and these will be more than strong enough just with the back panels glued and pinned in place. This panel here is one of the side panels from the wall unit that I'm making, and I decided that if I were to use the same jig again, my shelf pinholes would be a bit too close together than I'd like. So I just added a shim to the reference edge of the jig so that I can space the holes further apart. And the wall unit is going to have a central divider panel which needs matching holes, but I need to account for the fact that it is 18mm shorter at the top and the bottom. There's also an offset of 18mm at the front, meaning it's less wide than the side panel, so I need to account for that too by drilling some new holes in the jig. And here I'm just making sure everything measures as it should. This unit is going to have a fixed shelf in it too, so I'm marking out the location of that. And I'm going to use dominoes to fix it in place, as I don't want any screws visible inside the units.
Moisture resistant MDF is great for use in rooms where moisture is present, such as bathrooms and kitchens. And then I can assemble the wall unit. I actually made a mistake here, which I'll explain shortly. And once again, back panels get glued and pinned in place. I sanded all the edges just to ease over any sharp corners so that the paint will adhere better, and then I can get rid of all the dust ready to apply primer. And I've used this combination of primer and paint a few times in my videos recently because it works really well for me. I'll leave links down below, but basically it's acrylic primer and then I'll be using a hard wearing eggshell paint on top.
I've made a mistake. So looking at this with fresh eyes the next day, I've realised that the centre panel and the shelf were meant to be offset from the back panel, and instead I've offset them from the front, so there's an 18mm gap here. The reason I had planned to offset them from the back was because I thought I was going to actually cut a rebate around the perimeter to set the back panel into, but then yesterday when I was assembling the cabinets I realised that there was no need to do that because everything's going to be hidden by the end panels anyway. So now I'm thinking about how I can correct this mistake, and let me talk you through 3 options that I have. I could simply cut 18mm off the front of the carcass to bring this in flush, but then my microwave, which is about 330mm deep, would be protruding from the front, so I don't like that option. Alternatively, I could add some 18mm strips to the centre panel and the shelf, and by the time I sand that all in, you're probably not going to be able to see it. And I think that's a fairly good option, but I think I've come up with a better one. I was planning to mount this wall cabinet to the wall using French cleats. And to do that, I can use 18mm thick material, which is going to buy me that extra 18mm. So what I think I'm going to do is cut away 18mm from the front of the cabinet and then cut out a small area at the back for the microwave to sit back closer to the wall. And the reason I really like that option is because it was going to need a cutout in the back anyway for the electrical supply for the microwave to be pushed through. So I think that's what I'm going to do.
I could use a piece of 18mm MDF as a spacer to set the track, and then I know I'll get a nice consistent cut all the way around. And then I'm carefully marking out the cut I need to make at the back for the microwave. With the primer now dry, I get everything denibbed with 320 grit, and then I can get the first coat of paint on. This colour is called Victorian Silk. It's a nice warm pastel colour that we think will look good with the colour of the room. I think this is the 4th project we've used this paint on now, and it's still going. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, it's very durable, washable and scrubbable. And luckily I had enough paint left over just in case I ever need to do any touch-ups in future.
Right, I've got some bits. These are my shelf pins, and with any luck they should fit within my 5mm holes. Yeah, they're a really good fit. So now these shelves should drop right in. And here I've got some kitchen cabinet legs. These are the type that you can screw to adjust the height.
To fit these I measured in about 80mm and then fitted one in each corner, and I want to set them all to a consistent height of about 155mm, as the plinths that I'm going to be installing will measure about 150.
And some Euro style hinges for the doors.
For the hinges, I don't have a hinge jig or anything, nor am I going to make one, as I don't often fit many of these hinges. But what always helps me to fit them is just to remember one measurement, which is 22mm. This is the only measurement I ever need to remember to fit them well, and it's the distance from the edge of the door to the centre of the 35mm hole that needs drilling out to accommodate the cut part of the hinge. All the other hole locations are found simply by referencing from the hinges themselves. And here's a glimpse into the future when I'm installing the doors. Again, I can just offer up the door, mark up the hole positions of the cabinet part of the hinge, and I know from there that everything is going to be okay because the hinges have quite a lot of adjustment in them. I'm going to mount the wall unit using a French cleat. So here I'm ripping a piece of MDF at 45 degrees, roughly in half, and one of these pieces is going to get secured to the back of the cabinet. The other will get added to the wall later. And I reinforced this part with some screws just to make sure that it's nice and strong. And then another piece gets added at the bottom just to space it off the wall.
So I kept things pretty simple with these cabinets. We don't need anything special as it is only a utility room, but the real challenges are going to come during the installation of the cabinets. I'm going to separate that into another video, which I'll leave a link to in the description box below. I'll also be making worktops and a backsplash for the kitchen. I wanted to talk more about why you might want to build instead of buying a kitchen. Obviously, I already mentioned in the intro a couple of reasons that were specific to our needs, but to expand on that, what about the costs? Taking the cabinets that I made in this video as an example, I got through 5.5 sheets of 18mm MR MDF for the carcasses, doors, end panels and plinths, and most of a sheet of 6mm for the back panels. Obviously, prices fluctuate sometimes and they vary nationally, and you may or may not get a trade discount, but let's say a sheet of 18mm costs about £55 and a sheet of 6mm costs £33. That's a total of about £335. On top of that, you've then got the cost of the primer, paint, hardware and handles, even though the ones that I used happen to be free, but you can get packs of 5 handles for about £10 to £15. Now we're at £430. So what about if you wanted to buy all that stuff? I've priced it up in 2 different places, one large DIY store and one online well-known DIY kitchen dealer, and in both cases you're looking at between £1,000 and £1,100 including VAT. So really a lot of it depends on how you value your own time. It took me the best part of 3 days, and to be honest, a lot of that time was just spent painting. The actual woodworking was pretty quick. But anyway, let's say your time was charged at £250 a day. Most are probably going to be higher, but now you can see that buying in most instances is going to make much more sense than building. If you are a DIYer or a hobbyist woodworker, however, and you don't have the overheads of a tradesman and you're doing it purely for fun, then you can still save a decent chunk of money by building instead of buying. Thanks to MEDITE SMARTPLY for sponsoring this video. They supply a wide range of MDF and OSB products for both internal and external applications, all made from responsibly sourced wood. To get more information on availability in your region, visit meditemakesitreal.com, where you can also get project ideas and inspiration and share your own work with the community too. Thank you for watching.